let's quickly just show how that can be done. Man from magazine, whose name I've forgotten. What was your name?
Gavin.
Gavin. Gavin, do you mind being my stooge for this? I'm just going to plug in my camera. If you can sit where you are, that's fine. I am going to, it might be useful for you to sit in the middle seat though, if that's not going to be a pain for you. That's fine. I'm just going to, is that coming out on the screen? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to pretend that we're in an interview situation. If you just look at the edge of this table for me, I'm just going to place camera here. And I'm just going to place this light. Now we've got a lot of light falling on you already from this light. So if you bear with me, so that's going to slightly, just turn that off for a minute. Are those lights on the dimmer? Would you know what numbers they are?
7 and 8.
7 and 8. Let's just drop these because they're slightly giving away the next part. So let me drop those like that. I'm not too worried about color temperatures of lights and things today because we've got all kinds of various things going on. Just going to place this over here and try not to trip anyone up. And let's see a thing. There we go. Let's get this on here. So the first thing when we're placing this this key, and in terms of that no shadow, is making sure that the light is angled down. You can see that this is just an Aladdin that I'm using, but you can see that the light fixture itself is angled down. So it's got a little ball head on the back here. Sometimes lights don't have little attachments that come with them, you know, whether it's a yoke or there's some part of the light where it fixes onto your stand. They don't necessarily have the ability to do that. You can get various different bits of grip that you can do that with. I've got a Matthews baby pin receiver with a ball mount joint in the middle of it. So you can get the light up and you can bend it from that joint. It's like an oversized version of what Aladdin have provided here with this light. And getting that angled down is really useful because we want it up and angled down. Can anyone think of any reasons why you might want to have your light angled down and from above, even if we weren't trying to get that nose shadow to disappear? Yeah, it mimics the majority of the time where we're seeing things lit, particularly faces lit, is under daylight, and that's where the sun lives, up there, up high. And so by getting it up and getting it angled, we create also a more organic, more naturalistic kind of light as well. So we're going to try and place this light, and it is quite tricky, and I'm really sorry if I clip your toes, and I'm also sorry if I'm blocking your view of the TV. I'm going to try and get this up. There we go, we're starting to go in the right direction. I also have quite a short cable here, which is helpful. And let's try and move that in a little bit more. Sorry, can we just, yeah, thank you. There we go, let's come about there. And let's get this. Just going to brighten this up a little bit. So by getting our camera up high, let's just move this around a little bit here. By moving our camera up high and angling it down, well, you can see we're starting to send the nose shadow there. I'm slightly limited because I can't get my stand because someone sat there. I mean, I can't believe it. It's not particularly well set up, but I could always get my subject to move forwards. But with glasses of water on the floor, I'm just going to say, let's not do that today. But you can see as we're starting to bring it down, as we have the freedom to move that light around or move our subject around, it's fairly it's a quick and simple process to get this exactly where you want it. But you can see it's starting to head down. As it moves into this area where we have the cheek meeting the upper lip, you have that convergence of sort of rounded features, and because they themselves come forwards, what it does is it tapers and slims the nose shadow, and it makes it much easier to sort of hide it down there. Ideally, what I would have is higher and further round and a bit closer, and that would make for a much more tapered nose shadow. But if you consider the difference between this and what I see a lot of, particularly film students when they're just starting out, doing, which is not using any means of angling it, having it at head height, you can see how that starts to send the nose shadow across the face, and it starts to create, and again, only because I can't get far enough back, it's only a very short shadow, but you can imagine as that starts to move across, it kind of smears across the face. It becomes very unpleasant. The other common mistake, and I made it myself and mentioned it earlier, is to start by, it's one of the most common questions I've got in the past as well, which is, hey, sorry, there's lots of trip hazards. Try and squeeze into the second row if you can. And I alluded to this, as a mistake I made when I first started out as well, which is adding too much light. You can also, I'll also often see people sort of having lights too low, head height, and then adding another one over here and then matching the brightness of it. And you can imagine very simply how once you start to add another light equal distance on the other side at a similar level, you're going to neutralize that shadow entirely. So that whole dynamic of creating that three-dimensionality that we just talked about, that goes out the window immediately. And in fact, what you end up with is no different from if you just had a top-mounted light or a ring light on your camera and you were just lighting fully from the front. Now that in itself is fine and has an aesthetic that suits certain things, but it tends to be, like influencer beauty or journalistic, ENG, just a single light source right down in the face. That's more about getting the moment. It's about capturing what's happening, sort of warts and all. And it's certainly not about creating a sort of a pretty or an aesthetic look to something. I'm just going to bring this back again, and I'm just going to have to accept that it's not quite where I'd like it to be. It could do. If you, I just didn't want to.
We film people. We can make stuff.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Thank you. Okay, let's place you there. Let me just move the camera a second, and then what we can start to do is manipulate our other lights. So let's come around here. Let's have your eye line back over here for a second, please, Gavin. So, in fact, already that's helping a great deal. So we've got our light more where we want it. Hopefully I've got enough cable there. You can see as I start to move up and move in, we start to get, and as I move back around this way, you'll see the little Rembrandt triangle starts to get smaller and smaller. One of the things that you sacrifice, though, if you're going for that very small, quite, in many ways, really authentically Rembrandt triangle, because he often would do these very small little triangles. What you sacrifice, however, is the ability to kill two birds with one stone and catch this key in the eyes. You can see that Gavin's pretty much not got any catch light. In fact, the only little eye light he's got there is just a little bit from the reflected light back here. That gives you a clue actually as to how easy this is to remedy. So if you do want this small little Rembrandt triangle like this, you need a closer, higher, more oblique angle, but you lose the catch light because it doesn't quite get in the eyes. But as this very low light is showing you, eyes are very reflective. They're very glossy. And so it's very easy to catch and reflect a light in the eyes. It doesn't have to be upright at all. In fact, it can be so low that it's almost adding nothing to the overall appearance of the lighting on the subject, except it's catching in their eyes. And that catch light we'll talk about more later, but if you were in a situation like this, we wanted a very small little Rembrandt triangle, what we could do is either atop the camera or just off from the camera, we could just get a very small little light, turn right down just to add a ping to the eyes, just to brighten them up and bring that kind of, that sort of soul to the subject. To that end, what I often have with me is a little LED panel, very small little LED panel. There's loads that you can use. There's the Aputure MC Pro. I have the Rosco DMG Dash. That one I use because you can get a really good bubble diffuser for it. So it's a semi-hemisphere, opaque, or semi-opaque bubble that you can magnetically attach to the front. So it creates a perfectly spherical catch light, which is nice. it's battery powered. The battery, it can go surprisingly bright, but it's got loads of magnetic connection points on it, 1/4 inch 20 connections on it. It's great for just sticking in places. In fact, if I'm lighting faces and things, I'll tend to just leave it on an arm on a C stand, just have it ready to kind of move in and move about. But you can dim it really low. As I say, it adds almost nothing if you don't want it to the scene, but can just add a little bit of a punch or a little bit of a modeling to the face if you need it. Because sometimes you can't quite do everything with that one. Having said that, I love being able to do as much as possible with one light. Yeah, what a question at the back?
Could you repeat the name of the slide?
That light, that's the Roscoe DMG Dash. I have tons of different brands of lights, so they all do different things. You'll find with lighting, it's very difficult to just stick to a single brand. There's all kinds of different lights for different situations, from tubes, short tubes, long tubes, small LED panels, big LED panels, Cobb style lights that you can then modify. There's tons of different ways that you can use those lights. So it's hard to kind of pin your colors to one brand. But having said that, I am an ambassador for light panels, and I just mentioned that as I'm mentioning other brands as well. But my main key light that I tend to like to use is actually a 1x1 or 2x1 Gemini with a big softbox and egg crate on it to create a nice big soft source. With this Aladdin that's CVP have placed up here, you can see it's rectangular, so sort of a 2x1 shape and style. I've oriented it so that it's at the wider side, so we have the two going widthways and the one going up. And what that's doing is that's allowing me to get more of that light wrapped around Gavin, and that's something that you want to try and do as much as possible. If you have the room, get as big a light source as you can for your key. The bigger it is, the more it wraps around your subject, the softer it will appear, the more flattering generally it will be, unless there's a very specific reason that you want something harder or more focused for some reason. As I start to bring that light back round, you can see I'm still getting the angle of the nose shadow right, but I'm starting to expand that triangle. And if I come back far enough, I will start, again, this is where it's helpful to have a bigger key, but I'll start getting more of it caught in my subject's eyes, giving me that catch light and key at the same place. So depending on what you're trying to do, if you're trying to, if you're trying to catch a lot with one light at once, big, soft, just catching in the eye and getting that Rembrandt triangle, or if you're trying to do a more tight modeling, smaller Rembrandt triangle, you can come right in and then you can start to rely on other ways to get that catch in the light if you want to.